All right, let's put the task force together and talk about the markets. And joining us is Rich Berg. Terrific to have you here in studio, CEO of Performance Trust Capital Partners. You were down in Washington yesterday in front of the House Financial Services Committee,
I testified in the second session.
Interesting experience, I'm sure.
It was, and these guys are under a lot of pressure, and they're getting a lot of competing voices. And the problem that I can see is I don't think they really understand how the financial markets are built and how many of the regulations interplay with each other. It's like a Rubik's Cube. If you read my brief, or it's not a brief, it's called a testimony, as soon as you change one side, you got to look on the other sides, and there are always ramifications, and I think people don't understand that.
That's what we're here to talk about, and Ira Harris, partner at Praxis Trading, is with us as well. Ira, welcome. Rich, let's go to that. I mean, we're talking about some pretty sweeping regulations. Mr. Geithner putting out his plan on the table this morning, but what about those interconnected parts? Net-net, will this help or will this hurt, Rich, the financial markets in your book?
I think the financial markets do not have a lot of confidence that government will successfully navigate additional regulations. And therefore, I'm negative on it overall. They haven't shown to be a good job even in this latest episode, you know, with the whole bonus thing. And then the other thing that I think the government has to also understand is the retribution they put on people post facto does not encourage a lot of cooperation and risk-taking.
Rich, you know what the problem is. We didn't have enough regulation. That's why we're here and in this mess. That's what everybody on the other side says.
Well, you say that in a sing-songy voice, Michelle.
Because I'm making fun of the other side.
Even a lot of insiders on Wall Street kind of admit privately, you know what, we kind of blew it here and we went too far. The question, though, is Wall Street is far better at managing risk. They did a lousy job this time, but far better than government. And what kind of government rules can really manage that risk? And guys, what's our real goal here? To protect investors? Because as far as I'm concerned, when you put money into a hedge fund, you're on your own, babe. Or is it to protect the financial system from the risk of collapse? And I worry that we should be doing the latter, and instead, Geithner is now preaching the former.
What about that, Ira? Sorry, Bill.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think you have to create this super body. I think the elements are there just to do things right and bring us back to some real anchor.
I think the bailing out of long-term capital in 1998 told the market that don't worry about dealing with the big players, you'll never lose money in certain contracts. The loss is a great risk mitigator. If you never lose money or serious money, that takes away a lot of fiscal discipline.
So that was the first mistake. They should have let all those ripple effects happen and we wouldn't be here today.
We would not be here today because you wouldn't have the balance sheet buildup and all the just blind trust in these counterparties.
All right, let's get back to our task force. We're talking not only about the markets, but also about what's going on Capitol Hill, the move to regulations. Joining us is Rich Berg and Ira Harris, and Bob Pisani's here as well. And Bob, I'll go to you.
And when
this hearing was much more constructive, much more interesting, much more intellectually stimulating. And yes, we're all, you know, nerds and we need to get a life. But I happen to found this hearing really, really interesting. I'm listening.
I think Bob's really right here. I think that Timothy Geithner, we have seen him in recent days. He has saved his career right here, and he's going to stick around. What do you think, Rich Berg?
Again, I think the markets are not confident in the decision-making going on in Washington. I think we're seeing a short covering. I think the economy is in trouble. Yesterday, there was all kinds of talk about credit. I mean, we had banks in the testimony. There's not enough credit. The only credit being provided right now is by Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam's holding up the credit markets right now, but they're still not healthy.
What was the
with all
significance?
due respect, Rich, and I respect what you do, and you do it so well, but I know an awful lot of guys like you who make a living off of the free markets. And what you're seeing is a leash being placed around, or a collar being placed around these free markets. And what you see is a reduced ability to make a living off of those free markets. But I wonder if Main Street, the people out in the hinterlands who have been seeing their 401ks go down and the value of their homes go down and want the government, they look to the government to solve their problems, for good or bad. They're looking at these regulations as perhaps just one of those solutions to help solve their problems. I mean, what do you think?
If government had demonstrated in the past running businesses well, I wouldn't be beefing, but government hasn't shown that in the past. So why do I want to be confident with them taking over trillions of dollars?
But Rich, because let's face it, Wall Street betrayed us. They did a terrible job at risk management. They blew out the credit default swaps. They didn't have a transparent market for it. Wall Street blew this one, and now you guys are going to have to endure some regulation. We just got to hope that it's not too much regulation.
Again, you got to look a little bit more. There's a Rubik's Cube, right? It looks like Wall Street blew it, but Wall Street's risk parameter measurements were depending on companies like AIG, and AIG was viewed as a AAA company, so their balance sheet got out of line. Part of Wall Street's problem was when you get too big to fail, you need more capital. You know, the capital standards for a small bank and a big bank are the exact same size. That's a regulation that I can support, though. It's, hey, how many dollars of capital do you have? If you want to be $1 trillion organization, maybe you need 15% capital.
Well, if you want to write regulation, you should run for Congress, because that's the only way.
You know what, after yesterday's experience, I'll pass on that one.